Hei aha, te mea nui o te ao. Hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata. Ko Pat Doherty toko o Ingawa, ko Tumuaki o te kaunihira o Whakatū. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's my pleasure to open this first meeting of the Nelson City Council for the new triennium. For one glorious moment, I'm in charge until the Mayor takes her statutory declaration. Would you please stand while our newly elected council enters the meeting?
E ngā mana e ngā reo, whakatai mai rā, I tēnei rā ki whakatui a koutou e, tēnā koutou.
Thank you. I will now call on Shane Graham to do a karakia.
Tēnā tātou te whai, ki mai ka te mai. O mai te waiora ki a hau e tū te hoana ko te moia te kuia nei o te. O nā oai ai ero ai. Papa ke tuana nā tau ki te rainga, ka pō, ka ao, ka o tia. Tēnā tātou nā mana I roto I te whare. O tēnei huihuinga tuatahi o te kauni ero o Whakatū. Nau mahara mai tātou nei whānau. Nā mana, nā reo, nā karanga tahi, nā karanga rua, ki tēnei whare, ki tēnei tipu o tātou o te rohi o Whakatū. I te taha o te tairoa kiriopa, e te wā I taupu o tātou mātua tīpuna, kei te mihi ake te mihi ake ki a koutou. Mare ai ka ino ai tātou. Kia tau te rangi māre o tātou mātua tīpuna ki rongi a tātou. E whainga tikanga apui mā koroma, o mai te moi o tanga ki ronga, I tēnei kaunihira hau, kia ara tika ai, kia whakahu ai nā moimoia o tātou, o te rohi nei, I raro e te mnaki tanga o tātou mātou tipuna, I tō tātou mātou nui te ranga, nāne tango nāna ritu. Rire hau, oi marere ki a tātou tātou. Kia ora tātou. Tina, Ove Huye, Kata.
So it's now my great pleasure to call on the Mayor of Nelson, Rachel Reese, to take her declaration of office.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rachel Reese toku ingoa. I, Rachel Hadley Reese, also known as Mrs. Rachel Hadley Harden, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City, Whakatū, the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as Mayor Koromatua of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act. I now call on Trudy Brand to make her declaration of office.
Kia ora. I, Trudy Brand, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skills and judgment, execute and perform in the best interest of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act.
I will now call on Mel Courtney to make his declaration.
Kia ora. I, Melvin Francis Courtney, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act of 2002, the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act of 1987, or any other act.
I'd now like to call on Judine Edgar to make her declaration. Judine.
I, Judine Louise Edgar, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meeting Act 1987, or any other act.
I'll now call on Kate Fulton to make her declaration.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko au, ko Kate Fulton, ka whakapuaki, ka mahi, pono, tō tika, hoki ahau, ina me mātou tai ana auhei, paina mō te roha o whakatū I runga I te mana, kua riroa mai I ahau hei mima o te kaunihera o whakatū I raroa anō I te tūra. Kawanatanga, a rohia o te tau, rua, mano, marua, te ture, harono. Huina o kawa, a kawanatanga o te tau kotahi, mano, I waro, waru, te kaumawhitu, I raro, rānei, tētahi atu tō rea. I, Kate Fulton, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 or any other act.
I'll now call on Matt Laurie to make his declaration.
Kia ora everyone, it is wonderful to see you all here. I, Matt Laurie, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act. Thanks.
I'll now call on Brian McGurk to make his declaration.
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Brian James McGurk, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City Whakatū, the powers, the authorities and duties invested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act of 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act of 1987, or any other act.
I will now call on Gail Noonan to make her declaration.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I, Gail Noonan, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform in the best interests of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act.
I'll now call on Rohan O'Neill-Stevens to make his declaration.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I, Rohan Thomas Sean O'Neill-Stevens, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform, in the best interests of Nelson City, the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act.
How's that chair feel?
In 3 years' time. I'll now call on Pete Rainey to make his declaration.
I, Peter Rainey, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the very best interests of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 or any other act.
I'll now call on Rachel Sanson to make her declaration.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I, Rachel Sanson, declare that I will faithfully and impartially, and according to the best of my skill and judgment, execute and perform, in the best interest of Nelson City, the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act. Thank you.
I'll now call on Tim Skinner to make his declaration.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. I, Timothy Roberts Skinner, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interest of Nelson City the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as an elected member of the Nelson City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 and any other act. God bless, amen.
just have another round of applause? Ina mana, ina rao, ina rao rangatira mā, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rachel Rees toku ingoa, ko kura mātua of Whakatū, and so incredibly proud to be here for this day with this wonderful council. We have Councillor-elect Yvonne Bowater is unable to be with us today, and she will be sworn in at our next council meeting, but she sends her warmest wishes, and she wished she could be here, but circumstances did not prevail in her favour for this day. So welcome to all of you who have gathered, and I say to you, no mai haere mai, the most warm welcome to the Nelson City Council chambers as we join together to welcome this newly elected City Council. First, I would like to acknowledge the iwi of Te Ihu Waka o Maui, our kaumatua and our kuia who are here today to support us in the kaupapa of bringing forth a new council. We were welcomed this morning with pohere at Whakatū Marae. Whakatū Marae is testament to the time and the effort of our iwi, of their mahi and their mana, to ensure that there is a tuaranga waiwai for iwi to keep the home fires burning. Our marae is unique in New Zealand. It is a marae of 6 iwi, of mātawaka and of the community. It is your marae, it is our marae, it is iwi's marae. It is a very, very special place, and today we paid homage to the kaupapa by welcoming our council through the gates with pohere before they come here to swear in as councillors under the legislation. Hosting the pohere signifies our strengthening partnership with iwi, and it is a wonderful example of Nelson City Council's commitment to working together as community, demonstrating the value of the relationship as we live the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. One of my most cherished roles as Mayor is my role as a member of the Whakatū Marae Committee, and I feel incredibly privileged to be able to work so closely with our marae and with our iwi. A priority for me and for this council going forward over the next 3 years is to facilitate more iwi participation in decision making within our community. We make that commitment and we will make sure that that happens. I believe it is the kind of partnership that creates a powerful and symbolic platform for all of us to grow. It is beneficial for everyone in Whakatū, and I am confident that my fellow councillors will join with me on this journey. And as I look back over the past 6 years, I've held this position of the kura mātua of Whakatū. I do so with great reflection and satisfaction, and enormous pride for our community, for our city. We are seeing today councillors who have put themselves forward for election. They have come together with an enormous spirit of positivity, of collaboration, and I am absolutely sure that you are seeing today a cohesive and engaged council that is going to be focusing on delivering outcomes to our community. As I have recently indicated, we are looking at a council approach that is a little different from the last 2 terms, and we are taking a whole of council approach, ensuring that every elected official is closely involved in all aspects of decision making. Each committee will be made up of all councillors, ensuring that Nelson's representatives all have the opportunity to provide input. And we have been working hard as a collective group to come up with a structure that will produce the best results for our smart little city. In addition to the slightly different shaping of the council itself, I believe the new council is more representative of our community, particularly when it comes to age and gender. We have a balanced cohort, and every single one of you brings a wealth of professional and life experience to the table. Our challenge, however, as a community, as a collective, as a council and a community, for all of us, is to also embrace cultural diversity at the next election. And I leave that opportunity and that challenge for you all to reflect on as we will. We have a big job ahead of us, one that we've been asked to do on behalf of the people of Nelson. And we are here to serve you. We are elected to serve our community. We have received a very strong signal of support from our community that our new council must have a focus on mitigation and adaptation for climate change. And we pledge to honour this task. For those of you who are here, who stood for election and were not successful this time, I want to acknowledge you as well. You contributed to a very positive campaign. You were collegial, you were generous with sharing your knowledge and your ideas, and many of those ideas I hope we can take forward with this council. I encourage you, if you were not elected this time, try again. Sometimes it takes a few times to get here to sit in this seat, but it's worth it when you get there. So please, thank you so much for your contribution through the campaign, and please take what you've learned, share it with the community, bring your ideas to us, and continue your interest in local government. And finally, I would like to thank all of the councillors for committing to the role for the next 3 years. It is demanding and sometimes all-consuming, but it is also one of the most rewarding positions you will ever hold. You are here to represent the Nelson Whakatū community, and I'm confident you will take on that role with the pride and the respect it deserves. And to my family and friends, and to the family and friends of every councillor, you have supported us through our journey in local government and the election period. And that is not an easy task. Elections come with risks. They come with moments of joy and moments of sorrow. They come with times of immense frustration and times when you wish you hadn't put your name on the ballot paper, but you get over that. So I just want to thank all of you for the support that you have given. It is immense, and we could not be here without your contribution and your support. It is a time when today you can relax and enjoy. You've done the hard yards. You've got people to this place. I know you'll continue to support my councillors to make sure that they are nurtured, respected, loved by you and your families, your whānau, and that is important. But this is a day to be proud and to share in that achievement, because you deserve to do so. Finally, to our senior leadership team, to Pat, to your senior leadership team and all of the staff at Nelson City Council. One of the reasons that I put my name on ballot papers is because of these people. They are truly committed to serve this community, and it is an absolute pleasure to work with you and an absolute delight that I'm going to be able to come back and do that for the next 3 years. So thank you so much. Thank you for your dedication, for your commitment, and embracing the absolute spirit of service to local government. I think we should all now relax, take a big breath. This has been, I often, when I'm here conducting citizenship ceremonies, I say to everybody after they've come up and they've sworn their oath or affirmation of allegiance, I say, okay, phew, we can actually relax now. And I feel a bit like they must feel actually on those days where we come up and we know the words, we've been here before, but it is still a very big moment to stand here and to recite the declaration. There is a sense of anticipation, of nerves, but real excitement with this council of what is to come. I was unsure what Nelson would do when we came up to the election. And for those of you who are close to me, I apologise for the tenseness that it creates in the office, Pat and Jenny, and Richard at home, and Mum, thank you for always being there, and understanding and just keeping on smiling and breathing and telling me to do the same. But I did not know what this community would do. I wasn't sure if it was going to decide to be conservative or progressive. And if it had decided to be conservative, I would not be standing here. And I suspect several of the people sitting in these seats would not be either. But it didn't. It chose to be progressive. And I want to say to all of you, this is a very rare chance in local government, where we have this degree of cohesion at a council table. We have a breadth of knowledge, a diversity of views, but an absolute commitment to progress and provide prosperity for all in our community. And that is where we start today, and we are looking forward to the mahi, we are looking forward to the journey, and we're going to get underway shortly. But I'm just going to close and say to you all, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora, kia ora. We're going to break for afternoon tea after we do some photos. We're going to do the photos.
Can we just do a quick picture of the
right now?
councillors?
Right now?
Yeah, fully.
Everyone disappears, all right. We might just have karakia, invite karakia, or we'll do the photo first.
No, Karakia's at the end of the meeting.
Oh, at the end of the meeting, okay, righty ho. We need to say karakia for Kai, so we'll sort that out in a moment. We'll come and do the photo. But while we do the photo, if everyone would just like to wait while we do that, and then we will break and go for afternoon tea. And I will we'll ensure that we have said karakia for Kai. When I was preparing some words for today, I went back and I pulled out, or actually Jenny found my a speech from, I think it was the first time I was elected. And I just want to have to get the glasses for this, but because my eyesight's deteriorated. See this? Oh no, I won't show you. And I looked at what had been happening at that time, and who was here in the room, and many of the people are here today. Our Dean is here. Tēnā koe, Mike. It's nice to see you. We'd just come through the Labour Day weekend, and it was a Friday night that year, and on that Friday night we had just seen the mighty Tasman Marcos power to championship success under the lights at our Trafalgar Park, one of the best playing surfaces in the country. Sometimes things repeat. Well, that was the championship, this time it was the premiership, so that is what can happen in 6 years. And on Sunday we celebrated the generous partnership contribution of 2.3 million from the Minister for the Arts, Culture and Heritage to the Suta redevelopment, and now we have that outstanding regional gallery. So things do happen in local government. Sometimes they take a bit of time, but they do happen. Kia ora. So where would you like us?
I suggest everybody does go and get it.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Well, then I have a bit more space.
Tēnā koutou katoa, no mahare mai. Welcome back to the continuation of this first council meeting of the new triennium. Welcome to everyone who is here. We have one apology today from Councillor-elect Yvonne Bowater. Moved by Councillor Noonan, seconded by Councillor Edgar. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Just a reminder to everyone who's here, if you could have your phones and computers and devices all on silent, that would be fabulous. We are live streaming, so for those of you who are new to sitting at this table, I think you've watched enough of it over the course of the last year or so, but just remember to press that button when you're talking and then press it again to turn it off. The microphones do pick up side conversations, so if you leave it on, it could be entertaining or not, depending on what you're talking about. We have, just if you're looking at your nameplates, these are temporary nameplates. The timber ones are in the process of being constructed and we'll see them in due course. I'll follow the terms of the order of business today. We'll follow the order as set out on the agenda sheet, unless anybody has a particular desire to alter that order. Does anyone want to change things around? Are you happy to run as it is? Happy to run? Great. Okay, thank you. So, moving on to the interests. Please just remember to keep those interests up to date and just declare if you have any conflicts of interest as we go through the meeting, then please just declare those. We'll go on to item 7, which is starting on page 11 of your agenda, and that's the statutory responsibilities of members, and I'll invite the relevant officer to join the meeting. Oh, the relevant officer sitting next to me. Oh, okay. Pat, where you go?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a slightly different piece of report. I'm required by the Local Government Act to give a general explanation to elected members of certain legislation which controls the way in which the Council's business may be conducted and the law affecting elected members. So basically highlighting what's in the report. The Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act governs the availability of information and is based on the principle that information should be made publicly available unless one or more specific withholding grounds apply. Matters relating to requests and release of information are administered by Council staff. This Act also sets meeting procedures and requirements. There are other laws which the councillors must be aware of. The first is the Local Authorities Members' Interest Act 1968, which has two main aspects. First, this Act sets limits on certain contracts between the council and its members or persons associated with the member. Second, this Act prohibits an elected member from discussing or voting on an issue in which the member directly or indirectly has a pecuniary interest. A breach could result in loss of office. Under the Crimes Act 1968, a member of a local authority who accepts or offers to accept any bribe or who corruptly uses information obtained in an official capacity to gain a pecuniary advantage commits an offence. Under the Secret Commissions Act 1910, an elected member who accepts a gift or obtains any advantage from any other party as a reward for doing any act in relation to council business commits an offence. It is also an offence not to disclose a pecuniary interest in any contract. Under the Financial Markets Conduct Act 2013, elected members are in the same position as company directors if the council were to offer stock to the public, which we don't, by the way. Elected members therefore have the same responsibilities as directors and may be personally liable if investment documents such as a prospectus contain untrue statements. The Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 allocates responsibilities to officers to ensure, as far as reasonably practical, the safety of workers and others who may be impacted by the work the business undertakes. The roles of Chief Executive, the Mayor and elected members are deemed to be officers under this Act. Elected members are exempt from prosecution for failure to comply with the responsibilities of officers. However, they are still required to exercise due diligence when carrying out their duties. The role of Chief Executive is not exempt from prosecution. Finally, the Local Government Act provides that if a member is convicted of an offence that carries a term of 2 or more years of imprisonment, the member will lose office. So if ever you have any questions relating to these issues or think that you have a question relating to those issues, please don't hesitate to talk to me, one of the GMs or Mary Birch, and we'll be very happy to to provide you with advice or point you in the direction of where to find that advice. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'll move that we receive the report. Somebody care to second? Thank you, Councillor Sanson. And then I'll take questions in relation to the report. So I'll just put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. So any questions in relation to the report or the information provided verbally by the Chief Executive? No, everyone's happy with that. Thank you. It's quite a lot to take in, and I really do support Chief Executive's comments about, if in doubt, just come and have a conversation. The next item on the agenda is the Mayor's report, which starts on page 19 of your agenda. And just in introducing this report, I'll take it as read. I just want to say to all of you, thank you. You've been absolutely fantastic to work with. I want to thank you for the way you've started this triennium. You've been very generous with your knowledge. You've been really looking for how we can work together collaboratively. It's been a really good spirit, and I just want to thank you. It's you've managed to move out of election mode very quickly into elected mode, and sometimes that doesn't happen, so it's pretty special when it does, and it happens so quickly. So thank you very much for doing that. I would say in introducing this report that I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have such talent sitting at the table, and I mean that very genuinely. Between you have a skill set that many other councils are going to be envious of. The challenge now is for us to use that skill set and to use the culture of collaboration and to get on and get things done. And I guess in introducing this report to you today, I'll just say, you've all come in and said, that's exactly what you've said to me. We want to get on and get things done, move forward on projects, really a sense of a progressive council, an inclusive council. And my message in relation to achieving that is focus on the things that will really make the waka go faster. Let the small stuff go, stay out of operational matters and focus on governance, and we'll really achieve what we set out to do. So thank you very much for your contributions to get this report ready for today. I'm going to take the report as read, and I'll take any questions that you may have. There's one change that I am aware of, and that is in relation to the naming, and I think it's a good suggestion. If Councillor Rainey would, I think he'll still support this, that we change the name of the City Centre Revitalisation Group just to the City Centre Group, or would you like any other name, Councillor Rainey? What do you fancy?
I think
just press that button and you're good.
I think the suggestion would be the City Centre Working Group.
That would be great. We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Courtney, are you happy with that?
I just have a question, moving on from that. You did mention, Your Worship, the library and possibly the Haven being embraced, considered by this group as well, some of the other big projects. And I'm just wondering whether we need to define it just to the central city. That was all.
I think when we see the delegations come forward, so we're working on those delegations now, so they come separately, and we can have some discussion as a council. But if I was thinking Centre City, it'll be some of those major connections that'll be coming in as well to Centre City. But Councillor Rainey, I'm open to a different suggestion. I understand it to mean that those matters could. My intention is that they will be there, but it's obviously up to the council to decide.
The Haven as well, it would
yes,
be
I think so. Yes. All right. Okay, were there any others that people have passed on to me that I've missed? I've just know that one. Anything else? No. Okay, in that case, there's no further questions. I would like to firstly move that we'll do these in stages, because I want to speak to one of them, or two of them. So I'll move that we receive the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fulton. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. I will move that we appoint Judine Edgar as the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Noonan. We have a variety of names on the agenda today. Thank you. And then speaking to the motion, I just want to thank Judine sincerely for being willing to take on this role. It is a big role, and we have known each other for quite a long time. When Judine was across the border, although the border is becoming less and less as the years go by in her role at Tasman District Council, but we've also worked together in the community on many other initiatives. We've been involved with the Cawthron Trust together. Judine, I really do want to sincerely thank you. You bring a wealth of skills and capability and a culture that I absolutely admire in the way that you work with people, whoever they are in the community, and I'm absolutely delighted to be able to nominate you to be the Deputy Mayor of Nelson City Council. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Congratulations, Judine. Now, moving on to the establishment of the governing committees, and I think we can do the appointment of the elected members to single purposes committees, the appointments to the following elected members single purpose subcommittee, and the appointment of the following elected members to the City Centre Working Group, and we'll do those all as one. And I will move, and yes, the governing committees as well, the whole lot, so everything else that we've got after that. That's 3 through 6 on the agenda. I'll move. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Any questions? Councillor Skinner?
Thank you. No, I applaud you what you've put together there. With the planning regulatory, you realise we're calling it environment, and I'm not saying make any changes to what you've got there. What was the reasoning to call it environment rather than planning and regulatory, and B, it's still performing the same task under the previous brand?
The reason for changing it was because I think environment better reflects the breadth of the work that the Environment Committee undertakes. It's more than planning and regulation. It actually is, a lot of it is around biodiversity. It's around our kaitiakitanga of the environment. Climate change will set an environment for the moment, and it may move through to be all of council. At the moment it needs to be built and developed, so it'll be in the environment section as we go through. And I just think that's a better, more up-to-date name. Planning and regulatory was a bit of a throwback name actually, and it just kind of managed to keep on going, and I think it's time we refreshed it with something that better reflects what we do these days. The Chair and Deputy Chair are happy with the name?
I think it's an ideal fit. It actually reflects the work of what the committee does. It is the environment. You do planning to protect and enhance the environment. You regulate to protect the environment. So I think it's a far more inclusive and much more reflective role of the thing, especially with our regional council functions, which are generally all environmental. I think it's a long overdue.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. May every mayor's report moving forward be that quick. Thank you. It's off to a good start. Next item on the agenda is the annual report, and I'll invite Mr. Trigueta to the table. And Mr. Trigueta, you have Jacques and Jacob here from Audit New Zealand. If you're welcome to join us at the table or be available for questions, whatever you prefer. We'll wait for questions, all right. And Ms. Harrison, welcome. So the report is on page 24. We'll take it as read, but if there are any corrections or additions, you could highlight those now.
Yeah. Tēnā koutou, Mayor and councillors. This is a rather weighty document or weighty report for your very first report, but that's the way that the timing goes with these things. Councils have to adopt their annual report by the end of October each year, and there will be councils right around the country who will be doing this very process even as we sit here. I just have a couple of points to raise and to advise you of. Firstly, paragraph 4.5. This is where we make mention there was a draft annual report, and that went through to the previous Audit, Risk and Finance Committee. At the time that we prepared this report for this agenda, I hadn't had the opportunity to discuss with Mr. Peters the few changes that were made during the audit process. I have subsequently had that discussion, so that's just to let you know that. And I'll just make mention that this document is, of course, a Word version of the annual report. The final prepared document is laid up and is put on our website and has photographs and the like in that. Even though we do that, that's still too large, of course, for what we can expect members of the public to look at. So there is a summary document. The summary document is also looked at by Audit New Zealand, and then we also do an Al Nelson article, which is basically a summary of the summary. We have received, and it was attached to the, as part of the agenda, an unmodified audit report. Now what that means is that Audit New Zealand have gone through the document, and they have satisfied themselves that the annual report fairly represents Council's financial position, cash flows and operations, and that we have followed generally accepted accounting practice in New Zealand. Apart from that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Trigurtha. Any questions? Councillor Courtney, followed by Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Mr. Trigurtha. If you recall last annual report, 2017-2018, we fell short by 40% over 90% of our activities. Now, where are we sitting this annual report?
Right, through the Mayor. The annual report as audited has a 71% achieved for our performance measures. That's slightly lower than what we reported to the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, but it's still significantly higher than, as you mentioned, in the previous year.
Thank you. Councillor Edgar.
Yes, thank you. Just firstly, 5.12, there is the non-measurement of the environmental targets. I would have anticipated that when those performance measures were set, that the measurement would have been established at that time. Can you just clarify the non-measurement, please?
Right, through the Mayor. So there were 4 performance measures that when we looked at in more detail with Audit New Zealand going through that process over the last month, we couldn't be entirely satisfied that those performance measures had been achieved. And what that relates to is a new contract with EIL and the way that the information is being gathered. Thus, EIL are still performing the same task, but there's a mismatch between the information that we have and our ability to say that we've achieved things. Perhaps if I could just provide one example of that, that relates through to food premises. So there were 525 inspections made during the year. However, the legal requirements are that, and all those inspections are recorded, but the legal requirements are for a new premise to be inspected within 2 weeks, and then again within 12 months, and then again within the following 12 months if there's any issues which are raised. We haven't been able to tie up everything for all premises, so whether or not we actually did the first inspection within 2 weeks and then the second one within the 12 months. So because the measure is 100% achieved, we can't put our hand on our heart and say that it was 100% achieved. That's why we've said that it's not measured.
And I wanted to make a general comment on some of the performance measures within the CCOs and CCTO. and this is probably for going forward, but some of the performance measures were very broad and quite vague. So, for example, conduct a satisfaction survey with no measure of what the satisfaction level should be. So you could have 0% satisfied, but they've done a survey, so then it's an achieved. So is there going to be I guess a review as part of signing off SOIs or some other broader review of those performance measures going forward?
Through the Mayor, yes. So for all the CCOs and CCTOs, we're currently in the process of preparing the statement of expectations on what will go into their SOIs. So just for councillors who might not have been involved in this process before, for council-controlled organisations or council-controlled trading organisations, the trading organisations are the ones which have a higher profit motivation, as it were. For those, what we do in about December each year is we send them out a letter saying what we would be expecting them to deliver from 1st of July next year. They take that, they go away and develop performance measures, outline their work program for the year. They bring that back to us at the beginning of the calendar year 2020. And then we go through a process of negotiating and refining things such as the performance measures, and then we take those back through to council for approval. So in essence, yes, there is a process there.
And I just finally wanted to commend council on the rating surplus, in particular. The rates required to fund operations were within 0% of rates collected, and that is such an important thing, to only be rating what you actually need. So I wanted to commend the council, previous council and the staff on that. Thank you.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question relates to the audit report, which at 5.21 it says the Audit New Zealand is expected to issue a final unmodified audit report, and the current one, it's attachment 2, but it's blank on my page. So should there have been a draft one there?
Through the Mayor, it should be attached to at the end of the actual annual report itself. It came through because it's an interim audit opinion. It's a separate attachment, so it should be sitting right at the end, basically, of the annual report as attachment 2.
Not for me, no.
Apologies.
Okay.
I do.
Maybe the hard copy didn't get it. Okay, no, others are saying no as well. I understand that it's on page 37 in the agenda, so I think that's where you'll find it. There it is. Thank you. Yes, it is. Thank you. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some questions around page 29, small 25, regarding fees and charges were less than budget by 822,000, mainly due to the public transport ticketing revenue. And it goes on to say that public transport ticketing revenue was less than budget by 692,000, which reflects a delay in transferring to the gross contract with NBus. I really want to know, once we do that, transfer to the gross contract with NBus, will that be rectified? What progress has been made on that? Why are we in this position? That doesn't read well.
Mrs. Parfitt, would you like to come to the table to speak to that one?
29 large, 29 small.
Fortunately, Mrs. Parfitt's had to speak on this subject many times now. So,
thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, this is really not an issue, it's an accounting issue. So you will be aware, just to provide some context, the intention is to move to a gross contract when we go live with the electronic ticketing. That was supposed to have happened last year, so when the budgets were set, it reflected a gross contract, with council keeping the revenue that we gather from people who ride the buses and not the operator, which is the case of a net contract, which is what we're on. Because electronic ticketing was delayed, we are still on a net contract, but we are due to change when we go live with electronic ticketing at this stage, which is in March 2020. And this year's budget has been set to reflect the money to lie where it should. just to add, in case there was any concern, patronage on the N bus has increased and did increase by 5% last year. So,
Thank you, Mrs Parfin. Any other questions on the annual report? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Officer Parfitt might like to return to the seat for my question. I was trying to get there before you walked away, Mark. So through the chair, my question relates to 5.17, which is good news. It's a missed target, but only just. The target for getting people to walk, ride a bike, and even run to work was 20%, and the resident survey told us that we were at 19%, which is fantastic, up from 14% through the chair. So my question is, in a nutshell, how have we achieved this? And and where are we going? What's our next goal through the chair?
thank you, through the Mayor. This time last year, we employed a travel demand management coordinator, and that officer has been doing a great deal of work to further encourage active transport in workplaces and in schools and communities. Alongside that, we've got ever-increasing improved infrastructure to support those modes, so the Tuhunanui Cycleway, the Haven Cycleway. So it's a combination of encouraging behaviour change and providing infrastructure so people can safely do that. So we are on a trajectory. There is funding in this year and in next year to continue that work, and if anything, it's ramping up.
Through the chair, thank you for that. Do you think we can expect a similar jump in terms of people using active transport to get to work? And another question is, do we include students getting to school and Polytech in that figure?
Through the chair, the ratepayers survey is a small random 400 telephone questionnaire type survey. We are eagerly awaiting the census data, and for the first time census data will include students' travel. So we are eagerly awaiting that, and I understand we'll see that about March next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Courtney.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I'm looking at water supply on page 30, small 26, and I'm looking at during the drought, the following actions were taken, and I go over the page to 31, and it says, and I'm curious actually, the last action was fixing a significantly higher number of leaks than usual. And I really want to know more about that. Fixing a significant high number of leaks than usual. So the word significant caught my eye.
All right. Mr. Light. David, welcome. I'll try and think of a question for you, Nikki. I'll try.
Kia ora. Through the chair, that's a very good question. So during the drought, what we experienced was a lot of the grass, most people's lawns would have gone quite a dark grey area, colour. What we noticed in quite a few areas was there was nice green patches in certain areas, and where they're going, why is there a green patch? So a lot of people were calling in these types of anomalies that they saw, and we basically were able to determine there are a lot more leaks than we would normally get. So the drought just highlighted those areas.
Fantastic. Just while you're there, perhaps I could follow up with one I wasn't going to ask, but I will. Well, I've got him there. Right at the beginning of your piece on water supply, it mentions here an increasing number of subdivisions that take council supplied water but operate private pumping and storage systems for properties that are above the height of council supply, that height that council's supply can service. It's an increasing number. Do we have to relook at our abilities there to supply this water to higher levels, or?
So through the chair, I mean, when every subdivision comes in, we look at and assess how best we can get to it. So the higher up the hill we go, we don't necessarily have the funds or the ability to build ginormous reservoirs there. So that's left with the developer for key developments where we know the numbers are going to be great, then those other things will be considered.
Increasing numbers, I just thought it might be something that we might need to look at.
If it's spread out thinly, then it's not so easy. So you'd have it's not just concentrated in one area, it's spread out throughout the community.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No, we're all good. Okay, well, that's all the questions. So we now go to the recommendation. think we could probably do these all in one hit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So it's to receive the report, adopt the annual report, receive the draft Audit New Zealand opinion, and delegate the Mayor and Chief Executive to approve minor editorial changes as necessary, of which there will be none because it has to all be done by 5 o'clock. I could do. Yes, we can do that. Before we go on to concluding this report, I'll just invite Jacques. Are there any comments that you wish to make in relation to your audit opinion?
Good afternoon and thank you for inviting us over. Through you, Chair. I just want to highlight again, even though it's referenced as the draft opinion, it is our final opinion. The only items that's subject to changes, if there's any final cosmetic or wording recommendations, and of course the page numbers that will change when the final printer's proof is finalised. But other than that, we will be issuing an unqualified audit opinion, which means that we are satisfied that the annual report appropriately does reflect the financial as well as the performance of the council for the year ended 30 June. I also just want to make a brief comment in regards to the accounts themselves to note that there has to be a lot of acknowledgement to the finance team and to council to combine and collate this annual report. It's a massive amount of work that has to be done in quite a short amount of time. So I just wanted to thank council for the support and the work that we've experienced during our time. It actually went really well this year and I do want to acknowledge that. So thank you, Nikki, for you and your team. And then lastly, we will also be issuing our final management report to council within the next couple of weeks that would highlight some matters that we think there will be areas for improvement on where the council can enhance their current processes and recommendations. But again, I'll run that through management first, and it is few and far between, but I do want to again just say thank you very much.
Jacques, thank you very much. We appreciate the work that you do, even though it does create quite a bit of work for us at our end. But we know that it's a really important role, very, very important for all entities, but particularly for public entities. And the unqualified audit opinion is of quite some significance to us as a council. It assists us in terms of our very high credit rating, and we just appreciate that we've gone through this process, and I'm pleased we've been able to get it done before the deadline, 5 o'clock this afternoon, running it right up to the wire. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm happy to move the recommendation in the report. So I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens. And any comments, questions? I'll just say thank you again to the Nico, Jacques' comments. Thank you to the staff team that work on this. We have it is a big piece of work, and the team roll from one thing to another thing. It's either an annual report or an annual plan or a long-term plan. There's never any downtime for this team, so thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Elected Members Code of Conduct report, and Mrs. Birch is going to join the meeting. I understand that we've had some discussion and had a look at the code. It was one developed by Local Government New Zealand, but we've decided that it needed a little bit of improvement. So through discussion in your workshop and conversations that I've had with elected members and Mrs. Birch, we're proposing some changes to the code. There's a table document that's coming around, and I'll get Mrs. Birch to speak to that once it's been distributed. So we'll take the report as read, and then we will move to what we're going to do here. I would quite like to get this adopted today, because it's just as I said, if we keep on moving, deal with things here once instead of having to come back to them, we can get a lot more done. All right, welcome Mrs. Birch. I'll get you to just talk us through each section.
Thank you. Good afternoon, elected members. As Mayor Rees has said, that since the report has been distributed, there has been some feedback from elected members. And additionally, we've identified some slight inconsistencies in the wording used in the Local Government New Zealand template. So I thought it would be a good idea to identify those and to work through them with you so that you're all comfortable in your understanding of the process, as it's resulted in a slight modification to the staff recommendation in the draft resolution. So in the first instance, most of in fact all the feedback related to the management and processes involving complaints where there have been breaches in the Code of Conduct, or alleged breaches in the Code of Conduct, I should say. So in the first instance, I draw your attention, this is on page 59 of the agenda, section 12.2, which deals with complaints. And we would like to add an additional paragraph there along the lines of members are encouraged to address minor issues informally amongst themselves, and that the formal complaint process should only be used for matters that cannot be informally resolved. So effectively that is drawing a line between minor issues that you are able to resolve amongst yourself or bring in one of your colleagues to assist with a formal complaint process. And that would take place prior to a formal complaint process being initiated. Still on page 59, slightly further down the page, we're looking at the section which is entitled Complaint Referred to the Mayor. We've looked slightly more closely at the wording in the bullet points 4 and 5 on that page and paragraph 2 of this section. What we were noticing was that Appendix D, which is the complaints procedure flow diagram, and the specific wording doesn't quite align, so we're trying to match and align the wording within the body of the code with the Appendix D and the flow diagram. So to highlight two particular areas, the first one is that if a complaint is found to be trivial, frivolous or minor, the Mayor has authority to take action proportionate to the complaint. So that is dealing with low-level complaints, and that the Mayor then has the opportunity and authority from you to take action according to that. The second one is if following an initial assessment the Mayor finds the complaint to be material, it will be referred to the council or adjudication body or independent investigator, and it's just providing a bit of extra clarity in that place, in that area. We'd also like to slightly tweak the wording where a complaint is referred back to the Chief Executive to be forwarded on to the council or adjudication body if the Mayor's decision on the outcome is not complied with. So that would be an example of, for example, you're asked to make an apology and you refuse, or you actually just don't do it. And so this then gives the opportunity for that matter to then be considered either by council, an adjudication body, or if necessary, it could then be referred on to an independent investigator. As a result of these changes, we would then, if these go through, we would then need to go through appendices C and D to make sure that we've got everything aligned and that we don't make changes to one part of the document without making sure that that is picked up and carried throughout the rest of the document. We wanted to also, in the instance, the LGNZ template provides for if the Mayor is involved as a party, so that would be either as complainant or respondent, the LGNZ template code provides for immediately going straight to an independent investigator, and we felt that this would be it would be appropriate in this instance for the Deputy Mayor to undertake that initial assessment that a Mayor would undertake rather than immediately going straight out to an independent investigator. Obviously, if we change that, as I've said before, we would need to update the rest of the document and the appendices to reflect that. A couple of very minor changes have also been brought to our attention, that in paragraph 5.2, which deals with relationships with the staff, we would want to update the second bullet point to include the correct committee name, which is the Chief Executive Employment Committee, rather than the more general wording there. We also need to, in section 6, which deals with media and social media, pluralise member, so it applies to all of you members. And then in appendix D, which is the flow diagram, I would want to tweak the wording in the copy, in the version that you have. It refers to mayor / chair, and I feel it would be better to take out the chair, because of course this is a template that is used for regional councils as well, and obviously in a regional council the chair fulfills a similar role as to the mayor, and I just feel that it might confuse people who aren't necessarily aware of that, so I'd want to tweak that working. So as a result of that, then we would need to have an opportunity to update the wording, and I've updated the staff recommendation to reflect that, with an opportunity for the mayor, the deputy mayor and the chair of the Governance and Finance Committee to check that whatever wording and minor tweaks that we do essentially embody the changes that I've just talked through.
Thank you, Mrs Birch. Any questions, Mrs Birch? Councillor Noonan.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was trying to look up my email, but I can't get it fast enough. I thought there might be some other questions. I sent an email through with some queries regarding a number of things. I don't know if Mrs Birch has got that email.
I haven't got it to hand.
Okay, right, so I'll just try and do it off the top of my head. One of the things was that if being involved in a code of conduct as a panel member previously, the panel made some recommendations. One of them was that the dealing of these matters should be in a timely manner, because it doesn't help anyone to drag out a matter. Unfortunately, the code of conduct from the previous council was found to be wanting a little, and I do want to know whether there's a possibility that if we start with this particular one, that it can be modified partway through. That's probably one question I'd like answered. Can we adjust the code of conduct partway through a traineum? Mrs Birch?
Yes.
Yes. Mira, just pops that's turned off for some reason. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, yes, a code of conduct can be amended at any point through the triennium. It requires a 75% majority of those elected members that are present at the meeting that it is being considered at.
Okay, thank you. The second one was that there's been a change in that there's no panel as we had before, and the Mayor is the first call. And if I'm just thinking again on the timeliness, if the Mayor is not available for some reason, it might be something that's quite critical and needs to be dealt with, and the Mayor may not be available. Would it automatically, do we need to have it in here that the Deputy Mayor would be the next call? Do we need to put that in?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, again, it's not required to be embodied within the Code of Conduct, because if the Mayor is away for any period of absence, somebody is nominated, usually the Deputy Mayor, but somebody is always nominated to take over her duties. So in that instance, we would anticipate that one of those duties would be to fulfil the role as detailed in here of the Mayor's responsibilities.
Right, that's helpful. Look, I will try and find that email in case anyone else has got some questions, and I think we covered everything off. I'm pretty sure we think we may have, and I'll just double check. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And on the original document on the agenda under 12.2, point number 4, where a complaint is assessed by the Mayor to be trivial, frivolous or minor, etc., in referring to your changes, it says if a complaint is found to be trivial, frivolous or minor, I'm presuming that you're meaning that the Mayor would find that the complaint was trivial, frivolous or minor, or is it?
Through the Chair, yes, it would be that the Mayor would be finding, because she is the one who is undertaking that initial assessment.
Okay, so through you, Madam Chair, then So in every instance in regards to a code of conduct, even if it comes through the chief executive as a conduit, so to speak, the initial assessment of the code of conduct always will lie with the mayor.
Through the chair, yes, that is correct, unless the matter relates to the mayor.
The mayor, so, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Fulton.
Yes, through the chair, I have a question around whether the words trivial and frivolous actually need to be included, whether it can just read if a complaint is found to be minor. I guess I find the words a little, I think it's quite hard for someone who feels like they have a complaint to make that complaint, and if they feel like it could be trivial or frivolous, then that's quite disempowering, the words. I'm just wondering why they need to be there.
Oh, dear.
Through the chair, this is the wording that has been included actually in several templates, previous templates, and my view is that it is trying to identify minor matters which would include that rather than its intent being to disempower.
I just wonder if it's a little dated and whether we just need the word minor there rather than the other two words, because really that's what you're establishing, if it's minor or not minor in the first instance.
I think I think the words are probably fine, because I think there is, the intent of the code is that really this is the code of conduct complaint is a last resort, really. It's not the place you should go in your first instance. Your first instance is kanohi ki te kanohi, face-to-face, conversation. It's, it's the go home, sleep on it, first advice. Don't just, go home, let the steam level go down, and then it's a try and resolve it with, party to party, but I'm there to help with that, so it's come in and have a conversation. I'm there to support you as elected members, and I just think it's a better way to approach it than getting to what was a very litigious, essentially a very quasi, judicial approach right from the get-go. But from time to time, I don't expect that's going to happen with this council, but I am aware of, instances in other councils where, there will be, arguments, where somebody really absolutely doesn't like somebody else who's sitting at the council table and spends the entire term lodging code of conduct complaints. We don't want to be doing that. Who's on my list? Councillor Laurie and then somebody else. Councillor Noonan. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just picking up on what Councillor Rainey was asking before through the chair, the assessment is done in each case by the Mayor unless the complaint is about the Mayor. And I'm just wondering, is that a departure from the last term and I think the term before that? I thought a panel decided.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, that is correct. The initial assessment in the last triennium was with a conduct review panel.
Yeah, I thought so. So I don't know how many code of conduct complaints there were in the last term, and I've got a feeling you're not going to tell us, but I know there are a few, and I'm just wondering whether that actually puts the Mayor in an unenviable position, because I suspect it does put the Mayor in an unenviable position if she is constantly having to make that assessment, given the dynamics of the personalities around the table and the various issues that arise. And it strikes me, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this to you sooner through the chair, it strikes me that having a number of people involved in that initial assessment might be fairer on everyone. What are your thoughts?
And then I'll give you my thoughts on it.
So, one of the pieces of feedback we received, which I agree with, it would be very useful to have an early intervention option. And with the code of conduct that we have at the moment, because unless there's a 75% majority to adopt this, then the old code of conduct rolls on, then one of the reasons it's very time consuming is because it takes a truckload of staff time. It truly does. Sometimes to convene a panel, one time the three panel members weren't available, so we had to write a report to get more panel members appointed. It was very time consuming on staff. And so I absolutely endorse the idea that there is a pragmatic attempt to intervene first. I mean, if it isn't successful, then it moves to this greater stage. But my strong hope would be that we would have less code of conduct complaints and that they were more quickly intercepted before we go to the full-blown version.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a much better process. It's what I had in the first training. It's my job is to lead council, it's my role, and because of the way we had the last process, it essentially creates, I don't know what's going on, I don't have a sense of how many there are, they're all confidential, and I don't have a sense of, do we need to all sit down around the table and have a chat, all of us, around actually getting a reset on the culture. So I just think it's a much healthier way to operate, and I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm, as you know, qualified mediator and arbitrator, and comfortable with dealing with disputes. So I'd like to think there won't be too many of them, but I just think it was a very litigious process, and it did take an enormous amount of staff time. And again, if we are going to get this waka to go faster, we've got to have the staff doing better things and setting up panels and doing all that sort of stuff. Right, Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I just want to come through to 4.29, if I may. A little bit confused about this particular clause when it talks about a code of conduct committee and that the recommendation at this point of time is to defer it. Can we have a little bit more commentary on what you mean? Because I see that with the piece of paper we've just been handed that the last clause at 5 notes that a code of conduct committee will be established as part of the process to appoint elected members to committees, which I don't believe was in the first one. So if I could have a bit of an explanation. Oh, it was on the first one. If I could have a bit of an explanation about because that sort of seems at odds with what we're looking at, where the mayor is the first port of call and decides, as opposed to now we're talking about a code of conduct committee. So perhaps you could explain that. It's confused me.
Yes, sorry, Councillor, through the chair. Councillor Noonan, I wasn't quite sure which section you're referring to in this. You said
4.29?
4.2.
Page 48?
Oh, yeah.
It is at page 48. So it's sort of, the reason why I'm asking is that the code that we're looking at is saying that the mayor will decide, but then this says that that's recommended that all elected members are appointed to the code of conduct committee. So it sort of seems at odds. So perhaps you could explain.
Thank you. Through the chair. So in this instance, when we're talking about the Code of Conduct Committee, this would be not the Code of Conduct panel that you are used to doing the initial assessment. This comes much later in the process. So this would come where, for example, the mayor may find it to be a serious, potentially a material breach, or in an instance where the mayor has made an initial assessment and has tried to come up with an option, and either the action hasn't happened or what an elected member has been asked to do, or that they just do not agree with the mayor's outcome. It provides for the Code of Conduct Committee to then make the decision, or in instances where it has gone to an independent investigator who has submitted a report and possible recommendations, then a Code of Conduct Committee could decide that. However, it's a decision for you, because this is your code of conduct, as to whether or not you would want to create a committee, and whether or not that would be a committee of smaller numbers or a committee of the whole, or whether or not you feel actually it can come back to council to adjudicate on that matter.
So can I just respond to that as to what I think was said? So that is the mechanism. So in the example where I was on the panel, it came back from an independent and it had to be received by a committee. So that is what you're talking about here? Okay. So when we go to the flow chart, Madam Mayor, it talks about adjudication body. So I'm just wondering for sense of actually having the same words and terminology throughout, that maybe that could be the Code of Conduct Committee as opposed to got different terminologies going on, that's all. And I think if that had been there, I would have understood it better.
I think we can look at that as we go through and
make sure it's all tidied up to make it work. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. Just my input on that. I think some of that wording's good, especially talking about frivolous, etc., because it's a chance for you, Madam Mayor, or at least one person or the CEO to screen out anything that's vexatious, because it's a problem can be that can be used to disrupt someone's career or what they're trying to achieve by going through a process. So I like the idea that it can be screened early on as being frivolous, or even the word vexatious in that sense. Obviously, with the downside and upside, these things are only as good as we as a council or individuals or as a mayor respect the code of conduct. And as much as we're putting a lot of energies into this code of conduct, at the end of the day, it will only be utilised or given its weight if we respect it or use it as it's intended. So I don't think we want to spend too much time on this.
No, thank you. Councillor Courtney, and then...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Mary. We spent an inordinate amount of time on this, the previous council. And it'll be a real achievement for you if you can get this through today, because we had working groups reporting back and all sorts of input. So the only thing I want to be assured about is the fact that we still have ownership of it, because the original code of conduct we worked on, they said to us, it's yours. You know, you shape it to the way you want it, and it's yours, you have ownership of it. Can you assure us we're not losing ownership of our code of conduct?
Thank you. Through the chair, absolutely, you are not losing ownership. This is your code of conduct, and if there are things you want to amend or change within the template, then you have the ability to do that, albeit with, as I've mentioned before, requiring a 75% majority of those present to make any changes to the code of conduct.
In order to adopt at any time, in order to even adopt the code of conduct, you have to have 75%. So it's for every single step in relation to it. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you. You may have already provided the answer to this in earlier comments, so forgive me if I didn't pick up on the answer. But through the chair, worst case scenario, Her Worship the Mayor slips in the shower, suffers a mild concussion, nothing too serious, but a bit mild, and judgment is slightly off, and receives a code of conduct complaint, and because of the mild concussion, doesn't make a outstanding decision as she might otherwise make. What recourse does a councillor in that situation have?
Thank you. Through the chair, in that instance, if there is the ability for the parties that are involved, if they do not agree, support the decision and the initial assessment of the mayor and the recommendation for what appropriate action is, there is the ability to then move it either to an independent investigator or up to a code of conduct committee or another adjudication body or the council.
And that, through the chair, that is regardless of the ever so mildly concussed mayor's position on the matter. It's a completely different thing.
I'm not sure through the mayor that I'm able to answer necessarily that question relating to mild concussion.
Well, let's forget mild concussion. So what I'm saying is the mayor says no, nothing to see here. The person who is making the complaint feels otherwise and feels very strongly otherwise, and they've had time to cool off and chill out and maybe spend a weekend at the bay and come back, and they still feel like this is an issue. What is their... Can they then go to a panel or to a committee regardless of the mayor's position?
Through the chair, yes.
You can. Okay, that's good news. Thank you.
All right, I'd like really last couple of questions because I really want to get us moving through this. We've got quite a bit of work still to do and people on time frames because we need to be out that door no later than 4:45. Councillor Edgar and then Councillor O'Neill-Stephen. Yes, I just wanted to comment further to Councillor Courtney's comments is while we've focused our discussions a lot on really just two sections, section 12 breaches and section 13 to a lesser degree penalties and actions, there are all these other sections that talk about our values, our roles and responsibilities, our relationships, and to me that is actually where all of this starts, is particularly the value section. And so really those sections right at the back are those formal recourse, and that's why I think it is really good to include that section about just reinforcing that this is the formal process, and we have a lot of informal recourses, and it could be talking to the chair, it could be talking to the mayor or the deputy mayor or just a fellow councillor about the matters. And I think if we focus around those values and all those front sections, that is the part that we own, is our behaviour, how we work together, and that respect. And yes, we need formal processes, but it's remembering that's the formal, and hopefully that would be at the far end and ideally not used at all in a term. A lot of councils never actually have to get to section 12 in their code of conduct, and I'd like to think we could be one of those councils. Thank you. Councillor Neil Stevens.
Yes, building on Councillor Edgar's point, I completely agree that it's great that we have this foundation, but returning to Councillor Laurie's point, but on the other side of what could also be considered the worst case scenario of a serial litigator, if they were to disagree with the Mayor's decision, they then have the ability to go to the independent adjudicator. And to what sort of point do we draw the line of, can they then go after, if they don't like the independent's opinion, can they then go to the Code of Conduct Committee? I'm just sort of thinking, yeah, the worst case, but on the other side of where someone's just incredibly persistent to achieve an end.
Thank you. Through the chair, by signing up to and approving this draft code of conduct, you are agreeing that you will stand by whatever the independent investigator finds, and you will consider their recommendations. So in that instance that you have described, if the feeling is of the independent investigator that actually this is just one of many, I mean, we will have a panel of independent investigators, but I would expect an independent investigator to be able to pick that up. So the scenario that you've brought, you are signing up to agree to that as a collegiate group.
All right, there's no further questions. We've got some up on the screen. I think it's the same on both sides, isn't it? It's not like, yeah, okay. So we're up on the screen. What we've got is subject to the changes tabled, and I haven't got any others today in relation to any other parts of the code. I thought the social media section of this was particularly good, so it was very well written. Confirms the final wording to give effect to these tables, and that is to be approved by the Chair of Governance and Finance, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, and we'll establish that Code of Conduct Committee when we come back to do the other process around members. We're all set? Okay, I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McGurk, thank you. Any debate? Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the elected members' remuneration. And we'll go to, which page are we on now? 71, is it? Okay, 71. Now, I am aware through, and thank you very much for the discussions that have gone on in relation to this one, that I'm aware that councillors may, between you, have preferences for other than what is in this draft recommendation today, that you may wish to choose a different option. From what I've been able to glean, that some of you prefer option 2, some of you prefer option 3, and some of you prefer option 4. So, with your leave, I'd like to see if we can work our way through this where we're not going to have to do amendment after amendment after amendment. If we can try and sort of work out where the majority is sitting on this. So I think we can do that. We can have a bit of a go at it. So firstly, am I sense checking right that option 1 is so that we've got people at the table that would prefer options other than the one that's recommended? So perhaps I could just get a sense from you, if that's not your preference, if someone's got another preference, if they could just indicate to me and give me an idea of what they're thinking. Councillor Skinner? Does anyone else have another preference, just so I can see how many I'm trying to work through? Councillor Brand?
Option 4.
Option 4, all right. And anyone else? So we're at options, I thought two or four at the moment. Does anyone want three? All right, and we've got preferences for one as well. Right, okay. So would it be appropriate, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this because I've got three different options, and what I could do is we could get a quick show of hands. I think it's probably the most sensible way to do it, and then I can work out where we go from there. Would that be all right? You can speak, Councillor Noonan, if you think it'll help us get to a resolution.
Well, Madam Mayor, I have been thinking about this long and hard, and unfortunately, I just find it quite difficult when you don't actually, how many people know what all these roles actually do and exactly what they do? So we're trying to determine salaries, basically, or a payment, when we don't even know what's involved. I find it really quite odd. I think a job description, I think I put in my email, and I did email this to you, that a job description might have been some help, especially for new councillors who don't know what the role actually entails.
Well, I think the thing I'd say is that each council comes together and creates makes decisions on how we're going to operate. What's our operating framework going to be? So taking something that had existed previously isn't necessarily going to apply to how this council is going to operate. And what I'm picking up is there is a strong degree of collegiality, a desire for a strong degree of collegiality. We've got committees of the whole, so I would imagine that the chairs will look at their committees and they may delegate out particular areas to councillors who've got an interest or a particular area. They may say, well, actually, can you be responsible for those areas or something else? So I think it's going to be a little bit more fluid, actually, than the previous council, which I think is a good thing. The other thing I would note is that it is not a salary, and I just want to be really clear with you on that.
Apologies, I didn't mean to say salary. I did change it to payment. I agree.
Essentially, it's an honorarium, so a form. Think of it like that. So if you try and translate this into dollars to hourly rate, you'll get very depressed. Okay, I can tell you that. It won't be a happy moment for you. So don't do that, because this is not how the Remuneration Authority set this. This is the first time we've had a poll. Well, I made some views about the merits of this. It doesn't really help me to express them because it's what we've got. So we're going to have to try and make it work. So I think in terms of what are the roles, you'll have to accept a little bit of my judgment around the fact that I think there is value in having deputy chairs. I think that's a good thing. I think that as you form your committees and you work together, you'll work out what works for you. And if you find it's not working and there is something, it just doesn't work and there seems to be a real inequity, then you come back and we can talk to the Remuneration Authority again. We can make a change. Yes, we can. Yep, so we can do that. Yep, we did. Yep. So there is, and this time there are some things that are different. In the last term we didn't remunerate the chair of the Regional Transport Committee. There was no additional remuneration for that role, and I think that was unfair. I think it's a big role, and as I've said, it's going to be a very big role given we've got the Public Transport Review coming up. And the chair of the Regional Transport Committee also sits on the governance group for the Future Access Study, which is going to be busy as well, heading into 2020. All right, so sense of this. So can I get a little bit of a sense of, or starting with, what is it, option 1? So can I get a sense of show of hands for option 1? Okay, one. Okay, right, okay. Option 2. Okay, option 4.
2.
3. Okay, because we do, yep, 3. Okay, so.
Who's in the vote?
No, that's right. Not everyone has to. I'm very reluctant to be voting on this one, I can tell you. I think probably this is one. The only measure I would get involved in here is if you were attempting to reduce the remuneration for the deputy mayor, because I think that would be unfair. So this is the deputy mayor's remuneration has actually been adjusted down a little bit to allow a little bit more in the pool for everybody else out of the pool from what it could have been. So what I suggest we do on that basis is that we do move something. That's probably the best way to approach this. What do you think, Pat?
So my suggestion would be you remove the lowest polling one and you vote again.
Oh, okay.
STV, take,
Oh, okay. That's a very good idea. How are we going on this? Are we right? We're standing orders? We're looking a little bit like, there's a little bit of tension going on to my left.
this is simply a debate.
Yeah, no, no.
Eventually you have to vote.
Yeah, eventually we're going to full. No, we're just going to try and resolve this.
I could move scenario 1.
Well, let's just do the, can we remove it to get there? Because I'd like to try and get there. So option, what was that? We had the least
Option 2 drops out.
Option 2 drops out.
You've now got
So
option
option 2 is,
1 and 4.
you've now got 1 or 4. Preferences around 1 and 4. So that's your two to choose from. So can I get a sense of that? Number 1, starting number 1, sorry. Scenario 1, preference for scenario 1. Yeah, okay. And option 4, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
4, okay. Option 4.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Right. You have to see how persuasive you can be in your debate. See if we can get the numbers to be a little little less divided. I don't think there's any other options here. I mean, this is, it is where we are. So let's get on and we will, I think Councillor Laurie's offering to move the recommendation on the report. Are you still happy with that, Councillor Laurie? I think, and then we'll go into debate now and you've got a sense of where it is. Moved by Councillor Laurie. Do I have a seconder? For that, Councillor Rainey, thank you. And then we will move into debate. It's been moved and seconded. Anyone wish to debate? You don't have to debate. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support, obviously, scenario 1. That was the one that was brought to us initially. We had to think about it, had to talk about it. It seemed, I mean, these things are never fair, but it seemed the fairest. I am particularly a fan of the idea that the Chair of Infrastructure, the Regional Transport Committee, and the Deputy Chair of the Environment gets paid as much as the Deputy Mayor, because while I know the Deputy Mayor will work hard, the person who has that role, and I think it's awkward that we're discussing it in this way, but let's go for it. Councillor McGurk is a very hard working...
The best way to do it is not to personalise it.
All right, the person who will be in that role.
The role.
The role. Okay, so that role, Chair of Works and Infrastructure, Chair of the Regional Transport Committee and Deputy Chair of Environment, with a special interest in getting the Nelson Plan over the line, is a big workload. It is a really big workload. And so I strongly feel that position, whoever's in it, should be rewarded. And I think putting that at the same level as the Deputy Mayor is fair. And when I look at scenario 4, that for me, that is obviously the difference between the two. So that's the reason I'm going for scenario 1.
Councillor Rainey.
I'd endorse the same viewpoint. Looking at the list of tasks that sit underneath the description of that role, they're all big tasks, but the one that I see that's got a fair amount of work there is the NP lead, which I think has the potential to consume a huge amount of time. I would support scenario 1, but only if we can call the person in that role deputy, or D2.
Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, through the chair. I do have a question, but I'll speak briefly as well. So the gap between a councillor to the chair in scenario 1 is 7,243, whereas the gap between the chair to the deputy mayor salary is another 10,500. And I guess my question is around whether the role of the RTC and the deputy chair of environment is 10,000 more when a chairperson's role is only 7,000 more. So I'm struggling a little bit with that big hike. I think in the last term, the gap between a councillor and a chair was 8,600. So the chairs have effectively got closer to a councillor role, whereas the gap between being a deputy chair on the Nelson Plan lead and the chair of RTC, which previously wasn't paid, has gone up by over 10,000, that's 10,500. My question is, I understand that the Nelson Plan is nearly good to go. How many more hours is involved in getting that out the door? I'd like to think we were nearly there.
Ms. Barton.
You're in for a rocky road for the next month or two. There is an awful lot still in terms of getting it across the line as a draft to go out to the public. After that, there's still another 12 months plus before we get it to notification. So there is a significant amount of work in that process.
And what I'm going to propose, so this is a little bit of the tough stuff of coming into a council where we're this far through, trying to do a full plan review. This is massive, is that for some of you who have joined the table, you're going to have to trust that, you can have some input, but we can't go back to square one. So that's why I'm saying I need somebody who is absolutely going to own this process, will work as hard to communicate with those of you who are new to this so that you can, feel confident as you come out to sign it out to go out. But we just cannot begin this again. We've got to get this finished in this term, and that's why it needs somebody absolutely tasked with that. Councillor Neil Stevens.
I hadn't quite finished. Can I just finish?
Councillor Fulton.
So I guess when I looked at the scenarios, for me, scenario 2 created quite a similar difference. A councillor and a chairperson had an 8,500 difference, and then the chair of RTC in the Nelson Plan lead received an additional remuneration of 4,300, so about half again. And I felt like that was a fair reflection of the chair of RTC and the Nelson Plan lead, particularly if that work stops, hopefully within the next year and a half. I would hope that we weren't still carrying that on at the end of this triennium. But scenario 4 also reflects that there's a gap of about 7,200 between a councillor and a chair, and then 4,700 between the chair and the RTC role in the Nelson Plan lead. I do think that the deputy mayor is a full-time job. I think it's at least 40 hours a week. I think her additional 20 hours, if we assume that a councillor is working about 20 hours a week, her additional 20 hours is probably at about $17 an hour. And I know we don't talk about salaries, but it's a heck of a lot of work for the deputy mayor. She's picking up on everything across the entire council. I'd like to think that in our roles as chairs and deputy chairs, whilst we're attending everything, we're able to focus in on our pieces of work. And sometimes we put our hand up to do things because we really want to do them as well. I'm very aware that that other Nelson Plan Brian's been very involved in already, and he's very keen to continue that work. I think that we sometimes end up on more committees than we want to be because we're keen to participate too. So sometimes we accept that there's more hours involved, but we want to do that as part of our job.
If you can, somebody can move an amendment if they want to, but really we've got something up at the moment.
Okay, which I'm happy to move. Well, I'd like to move an amendment to scenario 2. But.
And we've gone through a show of hands, so.
4. Okay, I'll go with 4. With
scenario 4, okay. And that's been seconded, an amendment. So, Councillor O'Neill Stevens, you're next on my list. You don't have to speak to the amendment if you don't want to, but you can, and then you can come back and speak to the substantive motion later.
No, I'll speak to the amendment. On Councillor Fulton's point, her analysis is based off of the difference between councillor and chair from the last triennium, when really what we're asking all councillors to do is to step into deputy chair's roles. The only people without those official titles is Councillor Rainey and Councillor Courtney, who are serving on essentially stepping into chairs and deputy chairs roles regardless. And looking at that from a percentage point, the difference between deputy chair and chair has actually increased slightly with this new remuneration package. And to the idea of taking on additional responsibilities, I think that whilst that is a sort of comes with the job, the level that that the role of chair of infrastructure, chair of RTC, deputy chair of environment, and Nelson Plan leaders taking on is a step above what anyone could, through sort of eagerness of putting up their hands, actually accumulate in terms of workload, and that is pushing it, although still remaining in technically the bracket of councillor, it is pushing that workload up above a part-time job and should be remunerated such.
Thank you. Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. I support the amendment. I feel that it's staggered well, better than scenario 1. Obviously, I was originally looking at scenario 2, but scenario 4 is a good one as well. Obviously, we're all very passionate about our roles, and we put over and above. And so I know when I was a councillor and a chair, council is very busy, and a chair is very busy again, and a chair. When you take on that role, and we're all very passionate about our roles, it takes off time that you could be trying to make a living or so forth. And we are privileged to be paid because it enables us who are not retired or have another income to be able to do these roles. So my thinking was that the chair, the super chair, I still think obviously the mayor is a big role, and then you've got the deputy is a big role. And the chair or super chair, is one person to put it, is very happy that we've got the right person for that, but also think the chair and deputy chair and councillors are big roles as well. So by staggering at that and we might think taking it off that super chair role and spreading it out, there's more winners. You're going to be, if you're a chairperson or a deputy chairperson or a councillor, you're all going to be bumped up a little bit, and it's a good incentive to do your job well. But all roles will be done extremely well. And also concerning that, with that RTC role and the Nelson plan, etc., there's a lot of work to do there. We'll all be very supportive in doing our bit on that, but it's not something that's going to be indefinitely going on. I'm not sure if it's going to go into your third year, and this payment will be going for year 1, year 2, year 3 until it gets reassessed, or the next council. So I think we're looking too short term at this, and I like to see it staggered well. So I believe scenario number 4 staggers those pays and roles quite nicely.
Councillor Noonan, and then Councillor Brand, I think.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think scenario 4 is a better reflection in that the deputy mayor role, they have to step up immediately. The mayor needs them to be there. It's a much more immediate role. It needs to be a supportive role of the mayor. I think there's a lot more that goes on in the deputy mayor's role than we probably realise. I saw a little bit of that last term, but you know, they have to be there for all those civic events. They have to be able to do a lot of things that the rest of the council don't have to do, and they have to be there to be beside the mayor and sort them out at times, I'm sure. And you know, the mayor needs that if their mother's not around. Look, I also think that I am a bit concerned about the particular role that's being called the super chair, and I do think there is some risk in that, and I did raise that because that's a lot of responsibility. So it does need to be reflected. I think the reflection looks better regarding the roles as I know them to be, because the deputy mayor definitely needs to be just at that higher level. They have to take a lot of flack that the rest of us don't have to. The next role, which is the super chair, needs to be below that but higher than a chair. So I think it looks a better reflection. So I support the amendment.
Councillor Courtney.
Madam Mayor, I just want to get this in here because I might be the only one out of step, I might be the only one running against the wind, but I've got to say this. None of these scenarios, none of these options, for me, pass the fairness test. And I'm talking particularly, and I know some won't like hearing this, but I'm going to say it, not remunerating the deputy chairs. It's not good. And I just wonder how many of the 78 councils throughout New Zealand follow that pattern. You see, in the corporate world, in the business world, and any organisation, you don't promote someone to deputy CE, say, of a council, and then and give them responsibilities, give them a title, give them responsibilities, and not give them any remuneration for that extra, for the title and the responsibilities that go with it. So for me, none of these scenarios pass the fairness test as far as I'm concerned. They don't. And in the real world, they wouldn't. And I just need to leave that with you because it's just not the way things work. I mean,
Councillor O'Neill Stevens said we're all going to be deputies. Well, I thought that's very accommodating, but someone has got the title, been given the title, and feels they're going to get extra responsibility, and that should be shown in some form of remuneration. So I really would like us to give some thought to that too, if anyone else is of a mind to.
Mary, can you just help us out with what happens around the rest of the country?
Thank you. Through the chair, it's the vast majority of councils do not remunerate separately for deputy chairs. Deputy chair roles are frequently used as mentoring and development roles, so the majority do not remunerate.
No, it's been pretty standard. Yes. Now, who did I have next on my list? Councillor Rainey, and we're speaking to the amendment at the moment, and then Councillor Fulton, then I'm going to put the amendment. Not an amendment, or an amendment. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't support the amendment. The amounts that we're talking, the changes that you're talking are so minuscule when you calculate it over a year and take tax off that it really makes hardly any difference at all. So fundamentally, I think you're trying to make a point by putting up number 4, and I don't think it truly reflects the level of input that the deputy is going to have to put in. So I don't support this amendment.
Councillor Fulton, and then.
I just had a question following on from Councillor Courtney's a statement about the deputy chair. I guess I thought that 45,426 was equivalent to the deputy chair last time. The deputy chair last time was paid, last triennium was paid 43,863. So I would have thought that that new figure was on par with what a deputy chair was paid. And in fact, I didn't think we had any just councillors. I thought everyone had a deputy role. So, well, Pete's a chair, still a chair, yeah. He's still got a deputy. Everyone has a role in this new council, which is really exciting and neat. So there's no one without a role, and I think that everyone's actually on the deputy
Very inclusive.
chair.
Very inclusive, right. Yeah. You can, really.
I spoke earlier, but it wasn't to the amendment. Yeah, so there's a reason that the person who has been given the role of chair of deputy, there's a reason that that person was chosen for the role, and the reason it was proposed that that position be paid at the same level as the deputy, and that's because of the importance of that work and the size of that workload. And it's not a very smart thing to say if you want to be popular with a lot of people, but actually remuneration levels in local government aren't high enough for elected representatives around the country. And it's one of the reasons we have difficulty sometimes in some places, you have difficulty attracting a good range of people for these roles. So the idea that we are in this room some of us trying to argue down the idea that someone might be paid a little bit more like what they're worth, or what that role is worth, strikes me as really odd, to be honest. And I don't think it sets a particularly good precedent. And I'm against the amendment for that reason. I think we should seek to raise people's remuneration in local government when we can. That might not make us popular with some people in the community, but these are important roles, and we should recognise them as such.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll now put the amendment. All those in favour of...
Sorry, I'm just going to abstain.
Abstain, and I will be abstaining as well. Okay, this is between you people, apart from the Deputy Mayor one, which is what I've already spoken on.
I'll abstain too.
Well, it does involve you, Councillor Courtney, so I think there's one really should
Look, it
participate.
doesn't worry me. It doesn't matter. That's the point. As far as I'm concerned personally, it does not matter.
I'll put the motion, all those in favour of the amendment. Against?
No.
I need a bit of an indication, show of hands, those for the amendment. 3, 4. Those against? 5. Okay, it's lost. We'll now go back to the substantive motion, and I don't think we need to speak to that again. I think we've been through that. I'll now put the substantive motion. Everyone follows what I'm doing? That's right, it's okay. All those in favour? Aye. Oh, sorry, that's me again. And then, no, I am abstaining for that one. There you go, habit. And against? Carried. All right, it's carried. Thank you. Whoever came up with that system, Chair of the Remuneration Authority, let's say it's my favourite. All right, what have we got left to do? Oh, the next meeting date. Okay, next meeting date. Councillors, what I would suggest you do is give this a go. As I said at the start, if you feel that it's just, there really is, it's not where it should be, come and have a conversation with me, okay? And we can have a look at it. That's what I suggest you do. Next meeting date is on page 78, and that is telling us that we're going to come back for another meeting on the Thursday the 14th at 9 a.m. Hopefully you've got that. Hopefully you've got that in your diaries. I'll move that we do that. Seconded by Councillor McGurk. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. All right. I think that's all of the business. There's no PE business to do today, is there? Okay, now it says karakia. We've had the karakia, Shane did the karakia earlier on to carry us right through for this part. So unless anyone's got a good karakia that they can do it for us right now, we'll get ready to close the meeting. We are going to be working on karakia for the council meeting. We'll have some more conversation around that, so that's a bit of work in progress as to how we do that. So thank you all very much for your attendance today. It's a really special day. It was really lovely. Thank you to the staff for all the work that they put in to organise the inaugural meeting. Really appreciate that. Mary, if you can pass that back to all of the teams of council that participate, that worked very hard to make that happen. It was really good, really good. It's a big deal. You're all going to be off doing some induction, getting out and about the city. Enjoy that, and we'll have lots of sessions, I think, back the following week. We've got some workshop days. I'm not sure what's on the agenda on those. There's a few things that I want to run through, so I'll try and squeeze some time into those. But yeah, thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day, and go home feeling really proud. It's really good. Feel really proud. You should feel, and I feel really good about where we're heading. Kia ora. Okay, close the meeting. Yeah.